So I got a question for you guys.
Yeah.
When you guys were working together, how much did you bring the worship team and the tech team together?
Yeah. So
Go ahead, John.
for what we used to do was probably not as much as we should have, but what we would do is have a vocal rehearsal. Right now we're not having rehearsals because of there's a pandemic going around. And so but pre-COVID, and I think we're about to do rehearsals again in November, but we would have a vocal rehearsal from like 6 to about 6:50, 6:55. Band call time, they would start showing up around 6:45 in a different room in like the actual kind of auditorium. And then we would get everybody together, vocals and band, and we would and all tech, and that's when we would get everybody together, and we would do a devotional there, and we would schedule that out. Who's gonna lead the devotional? Pray together, maybe pray for one another, or see if anybody has any prayer requests. And then vocalists would actually leave, and then we would have just a band rehearsal, and then the tech team would be there for the band rehearsal. But that was weekly.
Awesome.
That was weekly. Yeah.
Yeah, we would also do probably 3 gatherings a year where we would get everybody together. So not just the people that are on one week, right? Because sometimes they're going to be tech people that don't know other tech people, right? And so we would bring everybody together, but we wouldn't do a separate like tech meeting. I might do that sometimes with the video team if we were going to start like something new and cast vision and that whole sort of thing. But we would do a Christmas thing, we would do a summer outing, and we would do a fall outing as well. And so we would try to get everybody together just so we could have fun, play lawn games, that sort of thing. But again, like
potluck,
like Doug was saying, we're building a relationships, right? You can't do that on a Sunday morning when it's go time.
Yeah, the drummer's playing cornhole with the lighting.
Yeah. And they're talking smack to each other and laughing and having a good time, you know? And so yeah, that was kind of what we did.
Yeah, and we would still cast vision. We would still, hey, this is what we're looking at doing, where we're going, trying to inspire, trying to keep them motivated. Thank you for serving, all that stuff.
Absolutely.
But have everybody together. How about you?
Cool. Well, we would generally start our rehearsals with we didn't have a vocal rehearsal beforehand, but everybody, or at least actually we did try that.
We did for a while.
We did for a little bit.
The first service did that every week.
Right. But the team that I oversaw didn't do that as much.
Sure.
But so when everybody was kind of tuned and plugged in and got their ears fiddle-diddled around, then I'd say, hey guys, come on down. So then the guys would come down from the booth and
it was literally a half a mile, probably.
Dude, it's so
all
far.
the way around.
It's so far down the stairs.
And then we'd either stand or sometimes just sit in a circle, you know, and just kind of talk and have a devotional time, prayer time together. So
cool.
The idea was I wanted the tech crew to feel like, hey, we are every bit as much a part of this team as
sure.
Oh, one other
else's.
thing that I forgot about. We would have breakfast together in between services every
That's right.
Sunday.
Oh, that's awesome.
So the tech and the band in one room, in a green room,
That's right.
and everybody's just hanging out.
Once a month.
No, every Sunday.
Every Sunday.
Every Sunday.
It was a team of volunteers, like the breakfast team.
Yeah,
Oh,
we would make
man.
breakfast for the team.
I didn't mean to say
Wow.
breakfast team. It was an actual legit
It was a
breakfast team.
Yeah.
Why didn't I work at your
They
church?
we still do that, and it's amazing. But yeah, we would hang out and
It
green
brings
room,
everybody
basically.
together. You
Yeah.
know? Food brings
Food,
everybody
yeah.
together.
Food is
all right.
you
It
know?
does.
Food and
Whether
beer.
you're a left brain or a right brain, we all like food.
That's true. Bringing it back. I like that.
Bringing it back around. Let's keep going.
Okay. So what's we got here? Takes 2. You guys were just talking about that. Garbage in, garbage out. If the band doesn't sound great to begin with, what's the sound man supposed to do with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I know that there's a lot of sound men who could probably make a great band sound pretty bad, but that'd be harder to do than the other way around.
It's hard to
Yes,
do,
it
man.
I get this all the time. Our sound tech sucks. I told you about this. I was asked to go to a church to fix the sound guy. They thought I had a special anointing. I could just put my hands on his ears and he would be healed. But at the end of the service, I told the worship leader, I says, sound man did a pretty good job. Your band is awful. And and I guess he didn't want to hear it. Sound man, I can make you louder, but I can't make you better.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Right? Communication builds relationship. You've been talking about that the whole time. Let's always have bi-directional communication. Always constantly striving to improve what we do for the church.
Yeah.
And by recording the services multi-track, that's a great way to do it. I would also say for churches who don't have multi-track, get a little handheld recorder and record in the room what you hear.
Yeah.
This is just like 2 ears in a room. This is going to reveal a lot about what the mix is like and what needs to be addressed, even if it's not multi-track.
Yeah.
All I hear is drums. Okay, we need to fix that.
Yeah.
So what was that relationship like between that tech guy and the worship leader?
It was awful, as it is in many cases. Sometimes the worship leader doesn't know the tech's name and vice versa. Sometimes there's all the snarky comments that you were referring to before. There's division.
That's nuts.
There's one person who's maybe more egocentric. I'm not saying that's just the worship leader. I've got egocentric techs too.
Yep.
One tech, I was in the whole service I was hearing, we were visiting this church, and the whole service I'm hearing. And I'm looking around and like, I'm going, my wife grabs my arm. She goes, please don't go up there. Everything in me is like, so I went to the guy at the end of the service, not to complain or anything. Just says, hey man, how you doing? I'm Doug. How long you been mixing? He goes, 15 years. Wow, it's a long time. You must really love music. I hate music. He says, then why are you mixing? Because I own all this. I'm an electronics engineer. I guess it's all my stuff.
Man,
I literally
it's almost like the crime tape, do not cross this barrier. Nobody could step into that world.
So possessive. Yeah.
And he would take his gear out. He would.
He feels like that type of heart is like they feel like they're owed something. Like you owe them something.
Like,
and that's,
you're welcome.
I'd rather not have you on the team.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, that's
part of that. I think, Doug, just a quick hit on that, kind of some of those slides that you were showing, the communication piece. I think part of it is communicating, especially from the tech to the band or maybe the worship director, is that, you can't have a good mix unless the source is good, right? If the snare is not tuned and it's all these nasty overtones, you got this nasty ring like you were just talking about, or the bass guitar, you're going through like this crazy effects, but like,
really farty.
I got my sweet line 6, thing, and so I'm going through a reverb and a flanger and stuff. I thought that'd be awesome, and or whatever. It's like, well, let's just try like just going through. Let's make it simple, clean. Turn your tone knob up a little bit, get some more, But if you don't have a good source to begin with,
right?
It's
not going to work.
Yeah. Well, I had a bass player once that I went and talked to, and we coached him for a while. But I walked up to him. He's like, "Hey, man, we got him this butt kicker so they could hear the kick drum."
Yeah.
So he sat his chair on that, and I was like, "Hey, can you follow the kick?" He's like, "Oh, I never follow the kick. I follow the snare." I was like, what do you mean?
Like,
what?
Whoa.
I was so taken back. I didn't even know what to say. I'm like, that's not right.
That ain't right.
That ain't right,
doing
man.
it wrong since the beginning.
And he's been
instant relationship. Yeah.
He's been playing for like 25 years.
That means he must be good.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Oh man, it was
That's crazy.
Yeah.
The other thing, Doug, that I'm just wondering is like, there's this expectation, saying this small church, like, oh, our sound guy sucks or our sound tech sucks or whatever. It's like, what are you doing to make him better? Like, what kind of training are you paying for? Who are you bringing in? Send him to a conference. Do a subscription video service. Anything.
Yeah.
What are you doing to set your people up for success?
Because watch a Parkway Electric's webcast.
Yeah. We'll teach you everything you need to know.
Watch the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, we have to invest into our people. We would always be talking about, okay, who can we bring in? Or we would put on a conference selfishly, so that our people could learn. Not even, not for other people to come in and like pay registration.
We did that in Bay City too. That's where we had Doug first.
That's how we met Doug. Yeah, we would put conferences on. Like these like you know, 25-year-olds who didn't know what the heck they were doing.
Yeah, bringing in Brenton Brown and all those people.
Michael Gunger, Jared Anderson.
Yeah,
all right, anyways. But so how are we investing into our people, right? And because in a lot of these churches, the sound tech is not a paid staff member.
Yeah, volunteer usually.
Right? And so how are we investing into
a lot
them?
of times they're like a 17-year-old, volunteer.
And how do people get better doing something, 13 times a year, Doug?
They don't.
They don't.
We're going to get into that, so I want to hold off on that.
All right, let's hold off.
Wait. Why not 12?
Oh, because I like a little bit more, just
like
in case.
Extra cushion.
Yeah,
once a month.
Cushion, once a month.
A leap year.
There's 52 weeks. There's 52 weeks, actually, so.
Yeah. Okay. I think Dwight talked about this, having them come down and, I recommend anything that you can do to make techs feel that they're part of the worship team, that there's actually one team, not two teams.
Yeah.
Amen.
There's offense and defense on a football team, but they're one team.
Right.
So
I never heard that one before. I like that.
What, the one team thing?
The offense and defense thing. But it's
well, we shouldn't be on like opposite sides of the ball. I mean, but the goal is the same. We want to win a championship, right?
Yeah.
So we want to glorify God, and we're on the same team. That's all. We do different things.
Yeah.
But how do we get together to form those relationships so they're stronger, so the communication bonds become tighter? We did a Watts Worship Arts Technology Summit out in Muskegon one year.
I was there.
Forget the name of the place.
Name
of the retreat center? Maranatha. That's it.
Maranatha. Yeah.
So we had workshops, we had times of worship, but where the best times were spent? We went down to the beach and built a bonfire and made s'mores together.
That was
all the people that were assembled. Yeah. We sat around the fire. We talked to each other. We made relationships. There's still, for my part, I'm still in relationships with those people who were there. It was crazy that one moment in that weekend was the most edifying moment of the whole weekend, more than learning how to mix or how to put a song together. And those are going to be some of the most edifying moments for you as a team, is when you can come together as just a people, as a family, and relate with one another. That's all. So
yeah, that's good.
Anything you want to say?
No, I think we talked a little bit about relationship and how important that is. I was at that Watts, helping with the event, and you're right, that was. I remember a lot of people talking about that too. And what made me kind of sad though in that situation, Doug, is that it felt like they didn't normally get that.
Right. And they don't. Mm-hmm. And that's what we were trying to illustrate, that this is a vital part of your ministry. More than the platform, more than the tech booth. Yeah. This is the part that makes the most sense.
The discipleship part, and that's why you're really there.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So we've fleshed that out a little bit, so we can move on if you want to. But
yeah.
Let's see. What makes this work? Communication, as we've said time and time again during this whole podcast. What to expect with time you implement. We talked about that. Inspecting what you expected. Debrief. You guys talked about that, Dwight and Michael, after a Sunday service that happened. You would get together and talk about what went right, what went wrong, how do we fix that? How do we can't be complacent and think we've achieved it. We got there. We're good to go. There's always room for improvement. Yeah. There's always something, little tweaks we can do to make it that much better. And if you're constantly striving to make it better, then the church is going to be the recipient of that improvement, and it's going to make things better. Don't take offense. That's something a lot of sound guys do. If you have a thin skin, you probably shouldn't be a sound guy because you're going to get blamed for a lot of stuff, and maybe that stuff isn't your fault. But again, generally speaking, techs are not as communicative sometimes as somebody with more of a right brain leaning. They're not as extroverted most of the time. So you got to pull stuff out of them You got to always invite them and have a relationship that's strong enough to allow them to speak what they really feel in their hearts, because a lot of them are holding in pent up stuff. They might not feel qualified enough, and then they get blamed for things that they didn't think they knew how to either fix or wasn't really their fault. And so there's a book by John Bevere called Bait of Satan. And the bait of Satan is when we take offense and we just hold it in and it festers. And one day that sound tech's just going to quit. He's not even going to say anything. He's just going to leave. Or that worship leader. It happens both ways. And we do it with the Lord, don't we? We fail at some point. And instead of just going to him and confessing it right away and getting right back on the right foot, get the conflict out of the way, we let it sit and we live with it and festers, and the distance between us and the Lord goes like this, gets farther and farther away, until you're at such a point where you don't think you can resolve anything. So I would say if you have conflict with anybody in the church, tech to worship leader in this case, address it right away, get it out of the way. Say, can we have a cup of coffee this week? I got something I got to share with you. So.
Yeah, and you got to not be afraid to have the difficult conversations, you know. I know a lot of worship leaders who are, they're just great people, you know. They're people-oriented, and sometimes it's hard for them to be like, hey, this really bothered me. Or, hey, I didn't like the way you did this, right? And so maybe they don't bring it up for a while. But the same thing happens with tech people, you know. They just kind of take it and keep going, and but it's okay. It's okay to have conflict. Like, it's gonna happen, you know. And sometimes those are some of the greatest bonding moments, is when you actually confront a person and have honest dialogue, and not be afraid of that, and saying like, hey, we're just both humans and we both want the same thing, and what does that look like? And I love you, you know. And you know, so
Jonathan, as a worship leader, was conflict resolution or confrontation easy for you, or is it something that?
I would say at the beginning, I hated it. I still probably don't love it, you know, for sure. I'm an Enneagram 9, so I'm a peacemaker.
Oh, yeah.
And so it doesn't come natural for me. But, you know, a long time ago, I just learned that, you know, I'm doing this person a disservice if I'm not going to have this conversation with them. And I also learned that after having that conversation, kind of like you were saying, Christian, like, you actually gain their respect a lot more. And so I always just told myself, like, I need to have this conversation with this person because they're going to be better for it. And if I feel like I have their best interest in mind, then that helps me have that conversation. Well, I'm having this conversation because I love you and I care for you, and I don't want to see this spiral, or, you know, maybe this person is dealing with a certain issue, and maybe it's in other areas of life, you know, as a lot of times it happens. So I just feel like, you know what, I'm going to have this conversation with you. And I hope that you really hear my heart. But I've definitely had to work on that. And in our we have like this worship leader pipeline that we take volunteer worship leaders through. And in there, we have like a whole 12-step process of how to have conflict resolution. And it happens very quickly, and a lot of times very naturally in conversation, but it's nice that it's kind of categorized.
That's good.
But yeah, so it definitely doesn't.
I'd like to
natural,
look at that material.
Yeah, I'll send it to you for sure.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I tend to not enjoy conflict.
Yeah, for sure.
And I will sometimes avoid it.
Yeah.
But absolutely agree with you guys that the sooner you address it, the better.
Yeah,
I think it's
go ahead.
I think it's highly important for introverted techs. You know, I consider myself borderline introvert, you know. But I think one of the biggest offenses on that platform was when a musician would walk in and start barking orders at me. You know, and it's like I had to have a conversation with several of them, like, "Hey, man, just say hi to me first," you know. Right. It's like, I mean, I want to be seen as a person, not what I do. Right. You know, and as an introvert, I can hold that in, and it would ruin my rehearsal. you know,
Sure. Exactly.
something very simple like that.
And that's
know?
where the worship pastor should have your back on.
Yeah.
Too.
But it's still building relationships with all the musicians as well, not just you know, our worship leader. So
I'm the opposite of all three of you.
Yeah,
like
you love confrontation.
Yeah, you like it.
It's not that I love It's not that I love
heart is
confrontation.
black.
Yeah, the
Black is your shirt.
Yes, yes. No, to me, it's not that I love confrontation. It's that I'm a verbal processor. So to me, naturally, it's like I want to engage with you, right? I want to know what you're thinking. I want to know what you want, and I want you to know what I want. And so it's like a two-way street. And so like, how else am I going to know what you're thinking unless I like kind of invite you into this process where we get to know each other, and that's going to make us better to work together. But yeah, it's never easy. Like if you have to have a tough conversation with a volunteer, for let's say, for example, that's never easy, right? And so, but for me, it just comes a little more naturally. Like I'm willing to just throw it out there and like, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, like, but I think it's natural because I'm a verbal processor, which, you know, sometimes can get you into trouble too, because you're like saying 5 different things at the same time, you know, and people are like, what does he mean? I don't even know what he's saying right now.
The nipping in the bud though thing is really important. Like you guys were saying, because I've had it where, a guitarist had said something like, well, I'm like, all right, is everybody ready to go? And he's like still kind of setting up or tweaking some things. And I'm like, well, I thought we had till this time, but like said it, like kind of yelled it out. And like everybody had in-ears. So I don't know if he thought people heard it or not. I was going to talk to him right afterwards and I never did. And then like a week went by and then like 2 weeks. And I was like, at that point you kind of justify it and you're like, whatever. It's like, if it happens again, then I'll bring it up, you know?
Yeah.
But also it's a chance for you. It's an opportunity for you to lead as their leader, and also to show the rest of the team that you are the leader and you are the pastor, you know, in a loving way, you know?
Yeah. In a loving way.
In a loving way.
Let me lay hands on you.
Open-handed or, you know, close,
close fist.
Good stuff.
All right, I talked about that one already, so we can move on from this. Relationships can solve more problems. A little example I gave with the guitar player. Serving each other. Here's some verses to look up. John 13,
some of
12.
those are on our core values.
Humility versus arrogance, you know. Better to be humble than to try to exalt yourself. You're all pastors. What makes it work? Common goal and being part of something greater. 1 Corinthians 12, parts of the body. We're not all eyes. We're not all ears. We need all these parts to function together to be healthy.
Yeah.
So that if one part of the body hurts, we all hurt. So, you know, those are just some things to keep in mind. And we can bounce off this one for a minute if you want to. But we can move on too. Trust. You talked about trust a lot in the beginning of this thing. The definition of trust is a firm belief in the reliability, ability, truth, or strength of someone or something. I believe in your reliability. I believe in your ability, truth, or strength of someone or something. Some synonyms for that are confidence, faith, belief, credit, reliance. Some verb synonyms are believe, confide in. I trust you enough to tell you this thing, rely on, and trust, hope. These are all great things that we need to have with each other. George MacDonald, the old evangelist, said, to be trusted is a greater compliment than to be loved.
That's big.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's good. That's a good line. Oh yeah, baby. Come on.
The band.
So Quincy Jones and Bruce Swedien, you know, arguably two of the most successful record producer / engineer combinations that ever lived. One was the visionary, the producer. I had an idea. The engineer is the one who pulls it off.
Heck yeah.
So there's another example of worship leader and tech working in tandem to create this thing together. You know, Quincy would say, hey, I have this idea in my head about how to make this sound like it's underwater. And Bruce Swedian would say, I think I can pull that off.
Yeah,
that's good.
Right.
Have you guys, we are going to take a rabbit trail here for a second, so just bear with me. Have you guys seen the Bad documentary, the Michael Jackson Bad 25th anniversary documentary?
No. So good.
It's unbelievable. Basically celebrating that album and the making of it. Yeah, directed by Spike Lee. And there's interviews with everybody and their mother about it. And it is so good. But they actually talk about the relationship between Quincy and Bruce and how it was essential with Michael in creating not just Bad, which is what they did, but Thriller as well, because they worked on both of them. And but I just, if you haven't seen that documentary, you should check it out, because it really just, there's this one moment in the documentary where the drummer, Michael Jackson's drummer, I forget his name. If you guys know it, feel free to say it. But they actually built a platform for the drums to be on so that they would get a certain sound. And like they talked about like the science behind it, and that Bruce came up with that, you know, in order to be able to basically get the vision that Quincy wanted with the drum sound.
Right.
And it's really, really fantastic. So if you haven't seen that documentary, you should check it out.
Cool.
It's so good.
There's also a book you should read called Q, which my friend Bill Gibson was the ghostwriter for. He's written like 20, 30 books on audio, and he got the opportunity from Hal Leonard to spend 3 years with Quincy Jones on and off to write his autobiography. It's like, he said, it was the most fun thing I've ever done in my life, being in his house and just talking with Quincy with my recorder, you know, going, so how did you do this? But the book is awesome.
Yeah. And they just came out with a documentary.
Yeah.
Like Quincy.
The Quincy.
Last year,
right.
Last year thing? But it was it's on Netflix. Check that out.
Right.
So good.
Is Bad on Netflix too?
No, that one you're gonna have to buy or rent. Yeah. I bought it. I buy all those things, man.
Here's another one. Oh, let me just go back to read what Quincy said. By the end of the century, Quincy Jones and Bruce Swedian were two-headed cultural conglomerate responsible for countless million sellers. Their success wasn't based on talent, intuitiveness, and ingenuity, but on friendship, admiration, and respect for each other in the music.
That's good.
We had the perfect balance of soul and science, left brain, right brain, right? It's always about that, Jones stated in his book Q on producing. There's always a science behind the passion and fire in music. It's what enables the artist to fully unleash his or her creativity. People think it's all about nature and innate talent. No way.
Wow, that's great. That's
really good.
That's really good.
By the way, too, you guys, if you or anybody else wants this slide deck, I'm glad to send it to anybody who wants it. So,
cool. All right, awesome.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
I know it'll be on the recording. Here's another great pair. You'd recognize these guys?
The legend, man. Are you kidding?
George Martin and Jeff Emmerich.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
So Jeff Emmerich wrote a book called Here, There, and Everywhere, which every sound person and musician should read, about the recordings of the Beatles.
Greatest band of all time. We can argue about that later.
This is for the benefit of Mr. Kite. If you've ever listened to that song, Emmerich spliced together multiple recordings of fairground organs and calliope in an attempt to create the effect. And after a great deal of unsuccessful experimentation, Martin instructed Emmerich to chop the tape into pieces with scissors, throw them up in the air, and reassemble them at random. That's the benefit of Mr. Kite.
Wow.
Come on, baby.
That's how you do it.
They didn't have cut, copy, and paste back then.
Yeah, man.
Wait, so is that what they ended up doing for that song though?
Yeah. So all that background cacophony of stuff, that's that.
Okay.
Wow.
So good.
Yeah, that's
Scoville, you know these guys.
He is a legend.
What are the things you do that would be a normal mix and over the top mix? He says the goal is just to be loose and avoid the major catastrophe. In the end, it sells the worship experience short, in my opinion. If God is truly in the details, and what we do on a weekly basis in many churches today is playing to the lowest common denominator, I think that is a shame, really, given what is at stake on Sunday. So what he's really saying is we need to get our techs involved in the creative process, get them trained, as you said, Christian, and get them all the help they can. What's your advice to that guy and gal that gets to sit behind a console a weekend or two a month? Because I don't know if you know this, but Scoville is a believer. And he mixes in church when he's not with Prince, Pink Floyd, Rush, or whoever he's mixing for that week, Tom Petty. Understand the context of what you're presenting. Respect how important it is to do your job well for the person who's there to receive the message as much as the person who's delivering the message. Yeah. So who's the sound man really responsible for? Sound person. It's the congregation. Yep. The platform's going to give him material. He's got to present it in such a way that it's discernible for everybody.
Exactly.
So he's not really responsible to you necessarily as the worship pastor or as a pastor, but he's responsible to the congregation. Faith comes by hearing, and if we don't hear anything, I'm not doing my job very well, because that's what's going to change people, not me just being a good friend of the worship pastor.
Sure.
So I've got to do everything I can to get him in a place where he can be the conduit for the word of God to go to the hearts and minds of people.
I always said the pastor has two tools. One is a microphone, the other is a Bible.
Yeah.
And I took it very seriously as a tech guy. I would make sure that I wouldn't stay up late Saturday night. So it infiltrated into my personal life on a daily basis, because that was the most important thing. If somebody got saved that week, I didn't want to be the distraction, you know?
Yeah, that's
so
cool.
I made sure I was well rested. I didn't stay up like hanging out with my buddies and all that Saturday night, and made sure I was fresh, ready to serve, you know? It was important.
Yeah, that is really good.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So you talked about the 13 times that you mix in a week. There's some sound people who don't take any weeks off. They're there every week.
Yep.
But even if you're there every week and mixing for 2 hours, how many hours is that in a year that you've mixed somebody? 52 times 2 is what?
104.
104 hours. It says it takes 10,000 hours to be good at anything, which is equivalent to doing something 7 years, 40 hours a week.
Yeah,
right.
That's
so if you're doing 104 hours a year, how many years is it going to take you to get to 10,000?
So many, man. Yeah. And so you have to know too, like, I think there's a freedom in knowing where you're at in that process. Because if you lie to yourself and think that you're further down the line than you are, then that's going to get you into trouble. But if you are also, if nobody around you is encouraging you at the level that you're at, you're going to be insecure. Right. And so being self-aware is half the battle in that process, I think, and being honest, being like, hey, I'm still growing in my gift. And when you take that sort of posture, like, ego goes away. Because it's like, hey, man, like, yeah, I know I'm still trying to grow. I'm still trying to get better, you know? And I think that that's important for even a worship leader, somebody who does it full time, to still have that posture. I was listening recently to John Legend on a podcast, and he was talking about how he was always at the right place at the right time. Like, his first gig, he went to, I think he went to school in Philly, and somebody that he knew Lauryn Hill. So he got to play in the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, because just through relationship. And but every time he's in the studio, he always has this posture that other people in the room are going to have a better idea than he does. Okay. And so he says that continues to this day. Obviously, he's at a different status, but if he brings in somebody to collaborate with him, he's not going to be like, hey, we're going to do this my way. Right. But part of his success with all the artists that he's worked with, produced for, written for, has been that posture. And I think we can learn a lot from that as leaders, even you know, being a worship pastor or worship leader or being a tech sound guy. So, yeah. What do you guys think about that?
I think that was one of the best records Lauren Hillary put out, man.
Oh, yeah. It's one of the greatest records of all times. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. I like that. It's just, again, at the end of the day, it's humility. You know, humility gets you a long way, you know. And God.
This slide had to do more with time in. How do I get the time in so I can catch up? Because if I'm only allowed to mix when the band is there on rehearsals or services, I'm never going to get to 10,000. So what are some of the resources that we can do to help musicians and techs get up to speed and get more experience? Well, for techs, listen to more music, just develop your ears more. There's some frequency identification things you could delve into that don't require going back to night school, like quiz tones or hear EQ or some of those things. Critical listening books. But the virtual sound check thing is probably the biggest advantage for techs to bone up on time. Granted, the band is not there. Microphones react differently in different environments, humidity, temperature, all that. I get it. But I can learn the gear. I can learn what a compressor does with a signal. I can learn how to EQ. Yeah. With iPad, I can go around and even pull up monitor mixes in wedges or ears to identify some of those things. So there's lots of hours in the week that could be spent if some tools are provided. And I'm just trying to get them up to speed. Musicians can take their guitar home and practice. Musician, player, piano, drummers, whatever. But it's hard to practice as a band together. So that's why the arrangement is so important. To know what part I'm supposed to play this week is really critical, and practice those parts along with play along tracks kind of thing, which Planning Center probably has. A lot of people are using multi-tracks now, even small churches. But there's lots of ways to get more time in. That's all I'm trying to say.
Well, there's a lot of free software for techs. I mean, you can get Tracks Live or, whatever.
Right.
Reaper, and I don't know if that's free. But anyways, you can take these tracks home and you can solo a tom for hours if you need to, and tweak that thing to your heart's delight and understand what how to EQ that. And
I think now that we're using Planning Center, or so many churches are using Planning Center, I think it's important that the worship leader maybe communicates to the sound guys, hey, I want you to be doing your homework on these songs too, just like I'm expecting my acoustic guitar player to be learning her part or whatever. I'd love for you guys to be listening to these songs and like get a feel for like, where's the kick on this song? How much verb is used on this song?
Yeah, sure.
So when they show up at rehearsal on Tuesday night or whatever, they're not just doing it cold,
Yeah.
Would you guys agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
100%. Yeah, there's an example of that too. We're talking about arrangement again. So let's say there's a part of the song that I want I want just instruments. So I'm going to mute all the microphones. Now, if I don't know the song and what you're going to do with that part of the song, I'm going to have 8 open microphones open on the stage when that part of the song hits. But if I know in advance that there's no singers there, I can mute a group of microphones. My system's cleaner. There's less potential of feedback. And now there's technical reasons why I should know the parts of the song as much as the musician.
Right.
So I have an example of that at a conference that we put on. There was a keyboard player. I think you had 2 keyboard players at this conference, and I think Central was involved with this conference. It was a bunch of people. Well, if you guys know the song "So Will I," 100 billion times by Hillsong. Well, there's this part of the song. Oh, it's so good. Makes me cry every time. It's so good.
Sing it, Christian. Sing it for us.
There's this part of the song where it all kind of like dies down, and it's just Joel Houston's voice with a dirty acoustic guitar. It's so good. It's got some grit to it. Well, we're at this conference and I'm mixing and I know the song like the back of my hand. And the keyboard player is just going after it with this pad, like throughout that whole time for this intimate moment.
Did you mute him?
I remember that.
So I remember that. I remember that happening during sound check the morning of, and I'm like, yeah, he's getting muted. And so I waited. I waited for the moment and I made sure he was muted and he played throughout the whole time. And then I slowly faded him back in when he was supposed to come back in.
Did he have any idea? Was he?
He had no idea. He had no idea. But
the beauty of in-ears.
And I did let the band know, the worship leaders. I think Jordan led that song, and I did let him know beforehand. Hey, I'm doing this. Want to let you know, give you a heads up, because that moment. And they were like, "Yeah, we trust you." And so that was cool. So I didn't just take this liberty,
Right?
But yeah, you know,
we trust you.
We trust you.
We trust you to make us sound better.
Yeah, but it just captures that moment.
Yes.
You know, sometimes it's about those peaks and valleys, and you don't want to miss. You only get one shot.
That's right.
You only get one shot. You know.
So what's your view on? Let's say you got 4 vocalists up there.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that in this one part of that song, one of the vocalists is just out of tune, and they're just. Will you take the liberty to say, you know what, for the betterment of all of us, I'm just gonna dip that person down?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
No question.
But why can't
Always
we go
about
back?
the result.
Why can't we go back to the first place then? Audition.
Yeah.
Because that to me, in my mind, is a little duplicitous. Sherry had that incident in a church in California she was teaching at. And this one woman's intonation was so bad that she was not only muted in the sound system, she was muted in the in-ears because she was affecting all the harmonies.
Oh yeah.
So when I said, well, we really can't hear her, and Sherry said, well, that's not right. Can we have auditions here? Can't we have people
why is she on the team?
Who can really sing? Why is she up there on the platform if she can't sing?
Right.
To give glory to herself because she's on a team. I mean, so I have a little bit of a struggle with muting people who are like not fitted for that. It's like some person says, well, I was called to sing. I have a heart to sing. Yeah, but you don't have a voice to sing.
I think it usually takes a voice.
So
yeah, I get
you
that.
wouldn't let any pastor go up there who just a guy out of the volunteers says, I can preach. Really?
You can.
I mean,
put the
I
time
get
in
that,
to
but
learn how to preach.
I think that's kind of like, you know, an extreme, more of an extreme, you know, story. You know, maybe Dwight's talking about mainly like, hey, this person does a good job overall, but in this one section, for some reason, she's a little flat.
Yeah, I got that. I didn't think it was like this was a weekly occurrence.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
she was on every week. Or the pastor's wife who thinks she should be grandfathered into the team.
You should leave the
I've
church.
muted her.
Yeah.
The pastor comes to me and say, I didn't hear my wife today. It's oh my gosh, I can't believe that mute button was on. You know? So there's been times that I'm guilty of it too. Don't get me wrong, but overall, I don't think enough churches. I don't know. Maybe they can audition for they feel some
I don't
inability to like say you're not good enough for the team. I don't know.
I play devil's advocate a little bit. I mean, if you got a 100-member church, you don't have a lot of resources to pull from.
Right.
You know? And it kind of goes back to the tech guys too. It's like if they're on 2 hours a week, are they really going to get good at that? And is the leadership expectation that it should be up here when this person doesn't have
Bethel status at 100 church?
And we've run across people like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's
absolutely.
like
Especially
it's not fair to that.
personalities.
It's not fair to that tech guy. You know, it's not what he does for a living.
Yes.
Yeah,
know?
that's what I was getting at earlier with the John Legend thing, with the posture thing.
Yeah.
Was being honest with each other and having the proper expectations. If we're a 100-member church, I'm not going to expect to have Robert Scoville behind the mixer, right? Or I'm not going to expect to have
as your lead,
or Dwight Beal as my worship pastor, right?
You guys.
Yeah. But no, and so I totally agree. It's
it
like
doesn't
having proper expectations.
It doesn't mean we're not striving for excellence no matter where we're at.
Right.
You know,
but it can go back to taking ownership of a song. Okay. It's like, okay, I can't play for the benefit of Mr. Kite on my piano, but I can do my own version of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if my worship team is a clarinet, an accordion, a stump fiddle, and a vocalist, I probably won't do so, will I? Unless I have multi-tracks to go along with it.
Right.
But I was in a church in Memphis, and they didn't have a typical worship team. They had this unbelievable jazz piano player, like a Bill Evans guy, with a singer, stand-up, upright bass, and a very simple drum set. and they're doing Tomlin
Amazing.
songs and all kinds of things,
amazing.
but in a jazz idiom.
That's sick.
Wow.
So
Great.
they mixed it authentically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They took ownership of the song and did it their own way. They weren't trying to be a cover band for Christian groups.
Yeah.
So use what you have, utilize the talent you have, but nonetheless, if you only have a cajon player and a guitar player, and there's a person there who wants to be a singer and he can't sing, leave him out. Okay. I'll stick with the two, and my style man will have an easier job of mixing that because it's easier. So, I don't know.
That's when the audience becomes the singer.
Right.
Yeah.
Matt Maher was he was a worship leader out in Phoenix, big Catholic church. And he moves to Nashville, and he's going to a Catholic church in Nashville. And somebody recognized him. He's there, modern worship in this Catholic church, and he's in the congregation. He's got his hands up. And somebody says, "Aren't you Matt Maher?" He goes, "Yeah." He says, "Shouldn't you be up there?" He goes, "I can praise just as easily from here as I can on the platform."
Yeah.
I love that.
So it's not about the show, I guess was what I'm trying to say. Some people just want to be on the platform.
Right.
But what gives you the right to be there? Do you have a heart for worship? And do you fit the criteria to help the worship team so you're not going to be a conflict?
Yeah.
You're going to be a compliment.
Yep.
Right? So
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
I think the same thing goes towards a person whose heart is not in the right place. Like we've kind of all said, you'd rather have somebody who has a good heart and their skill level maybe is not quite there than somebody whose skill level is pretty amazing, but they're horrible to work with because they stay in the whole culture.
Yeah, I've seen the most anointed, and I'm gonna use that word. Yeah, we're going there. Anointed, talented, when like somebody just gets on the mic and their instrument, and it's just magical.
Holy moment.
Every time. No, but I'm talking about every time they touch it. You're just
special.
It's special. Like there's something special about this person, but this one person, very talented, incredible. But when they were on the platform, but had the poorest attitude, brought division to the team, all of these things.
Right.
And it made it really hard to work with, so much so that it was like, man, we're better off without you, and it's so sad. It
is sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
We're good.
All right.
You got more?
You got more for us? Let's keep it going, baby.
I haven't even gotten to the I think we're gonna have to do another one at some point because we're having such great conversations about these that the other presentation I was going to bring into this, fearing we wouldn't have enough on this, is a moot point now. Here's another great team. Lincoln's a good friend of mine. I've known just about every one of his sound guys going back to John Mills. You remember John Mills?
Oh yeah.
He was at Bay City with us that weekend with Yamaha and at Watts. He was replaced by Adam Duncan, who went to North Point after that. He's with Lee Fields now for a long time. And this is Lee talking about Lincoln. The most important thing I can do to support Link is to let him know I have his back and encourage him. We're friends. We have great chemistry. That's why our relationship works. And we are very different people. We keep very short accounts. There's the offense thing again. This is a key to staying unified. We can and do have conflict, but because we keep short accounts, we get through it quickly and professionally and can immediately engage in friendship again. The core of our working relationship is actually our non-working relationship.
Oh, that's a great line, man.
Yeah.
That's good.
So here's another thing to think about just in general. Because we know each other so well, you might say something to somebody that day and not know what they're going through at the moment. It could be something completely different from what you're bringing up.
Yeah.
But because they're going through this, you might get a response that's not indicative of what you would have expected. So that to me is the strongest part of communication relationship, is knowing, okay, they're going through a struggle right now financially. They just lost their job. He's having a conflict with his wife. Kids are unruly. I don't know. But try not to take that as being just the response to what you have presented. It might be something else entirely, right?
Yeah, it might be deeper.
Right. So Matt Grundon, he's a friend of mine. He was a tour manager for Big Daddy Weave. So I think the most important thing for everyone to be on the same page, everyone knows they're a team. There needs to be a mutual respect between worship leader and techs. The worship leader is respectful of the sound guy. The rest of the band will hopefully follow suit. Many times they don't go hand in hand. But he had this more important thing to say. I'm skipping through some of this thing.
Yeah.
With Big Daddy Weave, let me here. Go back here. They found basically put in my hands as their sound guy, they trust me to make it as good as possible each night. And don't worry how I do it. The band knows I am on their side. I want to be as good as it can possibly be. I believe it starts at the instrument, is what Michael said before, or Jonathan, the source. So I'm always offering suggestions on tone, levels, and even how something is played. I walked into a really good situation where the band guys are already good players. They do their thing. The thing they had been doing for 12 years at that point. This is Big Daddy Weave. It was up to me to adjust to them as the new guy, not the other way around. By respecting their way of doing things, I was able to start offering suggestions, and now it is to the point that I'm involved in the conversations on song choices, song structure, etc. The band understands I offer a different view, literally, because each night I stand in the audience and see and hear people's responses right next to me. That's a cool point, because some people ask me, how loud should it be in the room? And he's saying in this one line, use your eyes, not just your ears. And if the people are engaged, you're probably right around the right level. If it's too loud, it becomes a concert. And if it's too soft, people are sitting down because they don't want to be heard singing over the band.
Right.
Yeah, it's good.
It's all about how you approach. If you dive in and start telling them how bad something was or something didn't work, they'll look at you like you just ate the last cupcake. So there's a couple of different things in here, but we can talk about that, and we have been talking about that. It's very obvious that you guys have great relationships with each other, and that should be an illustration for how we might try to do things. Is just get closer as friends, right?
Yeah.
Here's some things that tech can do to support the worship leader. Be on time. Early is better. There's a conference called Philo, first in, last out.
Oh, yeah.
We've been to it.
That's the tech. He's got to be there first, and he's going to be out of there last.
Thank you,
And that's the
Father.
kind of commitment you want from your team too. I don't want volunteers leaving when I have to strike everything. So communicate, be ready to go, line check, sound check as quickly as possible, have a talk back mic, record the services, serve. Don't be critical in front of the whole team.
Yep.
It's like, punishing your child in public, something you don't do. Right. Yeah. Remember why you do what you do. Don't take offense. Pray.
Yeah. I mean, why don't you guys talk a little bit about that from the worship perspective, some examples, some things that you've gone through, good and bad, from the worship leader perspective as to how techs can better serve you guys.
Well, I can tell you it's a huge boost when you walk in the room and you feel like, whoa, things are already happening here.
Yeah.
And sometimes, we may be in the room earlier as well, but yeah, that whole Philo thing. And I know that's kind of, techs, you kind of get the short end of the stick, you having to be first in and last out requires a ton of commitment, but it's a huge encouragement for me when I walk in, and Bruce, who I'm working with now, I'm like, man, he's got the lines run and he's got the aviums all set, and that's amazing. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And then that helps me just focus on the team. And
yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I've been in where you come in on Sunday morning, early call time, and things are ready to go, and everything is just prepped, microphones here, the drums, the aviums or the live mixes everything is ready to go. And it's just, you feel honored and you feel kind of served. Like, man, thank you for doing this. This is going to help make this morning go so much smoother. And that really is going to be reflected in the live worship time. with the congregation. And you've also, I've come in and things aren't quite as ready, or they're running late, or, I'm running late, or, things aren't quite there. And it's just like, okay, we got to hurry up. And it kind of sets that tone for like, man, I wish we could have went over that one song one more time, but we didn't. But now we got to get off the platform because people are starting to come in or whatever.
Right.
And you just feel kind of honored and served in that way. And it's, I've always been privileged to have just an amazing sound guy, and Christian has been that for a couple times, but even at other places, I mean, other churches, and they've been great, and there's always been relationship there.
Yep. And it's a give and take. If we back it up a couple, 2 or 3 days, we got to do our homework first, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And picking the songs and creating the arrangements and laying out the team, and so that the tech guys have everything they need.
Yeah.
And that's where I would fall short sometimes with Michael.
Not very often.
But every once in a while I'd show up on Sunday morning and, hey man, can we add another acoustic guitar player?
What do you need that for?
So this is the layout. Here's the schematic. I printed it out already. You can't change anything.
Right.
Or they come in at, last minute and say, I forgot to tell you, Doug, it's Sunday morning, by the way, that the 200-voice Christian high school choir will be singing with us this morning.
Oh,
really? We don't have any choir mics.
That's a big one.
Oh, we'll use 58s. No,
that's funny.
Yeah, that can be scary.
That's right, fellas.
Yeah, that'll throw you.
All right. So just in case the worship leader forgot any of these things, no last minute request. Absolutely necessary. Allow ample time to prepare. If you had all week to tell me this and you're telling me on Saturday night,
right?
It ain't going to get done probably. I'll try. I'll do my best.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I would really appreciate if you respected my time a little bit more, and vice versa.
Well, and as a tech guy, you do have to bend. I mean,
You do.
tech guys have to learn how to bend too.
Right.
Yeah,
especially when things go awry. That wireless microphone you put up is not working. So what are we going to do?
Right. Well, the way I like to say it is for techs is that you have to have flexibility in your capability because things are going to change. And we're serving more than just the worship leader, the pastor and his slides, announcements. Oh, we made this graphic for this announcement we're doing last minute. Can you throw it into Pro Presenter? So you're stretched in all different kind of ways. And so having flexibility and being prepared for that and saying like, hey, that's why I'm here. That's why they need me, is so that I can help them with these requests. So,
right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The more of a culture of organization you have, the more you're able to adapt to those last minute things. Right.
Yeah.
But if that's the culture and it's just always chaotic, then it breeds resentment.
It does.
Frustration.
Right.
I know a lot of our team doesn't read music necessarily. I just had this conversation with one of my friends who had this bass player in his band who always wanted to learn things by rote, right? Which is fine, except when he's learning by rote and he's not doing the parts that he's trying to learn by rote. They're different. So the guitar player starts writing tabs out for him, and the bass player goes, I don't read tabs. Well, how do you learn? By rote. Yeah, but you're not doing the part right. So how about on sheet music? Can I write? I don't read music at all. I'd learn by rote. So what are you supposed to do? So there's some people who don't understand that. So you have to write down what you expect from them if they don't read. Like, let's say this is 10,000 Reasons, and I want to do my own format of it. It's not the way Matt Redman did it. It's the way I want to do it. So when I write these notes out, it gives the band a general idea of what the song structure is going to be like. And I can give that to the sound guy as well. I might get more specific with things, like on verse 3, we don't want the drums thinned out, snare on 4 instead of 2 and 4, long whole notes on the bass matching the kick, acoustic guitar strumming, sustained open chords on piano. So you can get as general or as specific as you want. but I like writing these notes out for my band so they know what to expect. So I have 3 guitar players. They're all playing in the same fret position. That ain't going to happen. Okay.
Yep.
So
no, that's
anyway.
really good. I love that you also mentioned that you would provide these notes for the sound tech, but even in larger churches, it's nice for a video director, video team to also have this, especially if you live stream or if you iMag. That way they know, oh, there's a guitar solo coming up. Oh, this whole intro is really just drums and synth.
Yeah. So
you know,
don't have it on the worship.
The worship leader, right? Because he's not doing anything. You know, he's waiting.
Exactly. The whole. I meant to say the whole tech team, not just the sound guy. No, but you're right. I mean, if I know the acoustic guitar, and the reason this is an acoustic guitar only is because what happened before this song was a song ending on this huge climax where the whole band was just crushing it. So it gave the congregation a break when I went into an intro that was just an acoustic guitar. I didn't go right into another full band intro. Right. So I'm thinking almost like putting a record together. How is this mastering process going to blend one song into the other one?
Yeah.
And key changes, the same thing. We staying in the same key? Are we going to modulate? Whatever. Anyway.
Yeah, that's good. No, that's awesome.
I haven't modulated in a while, man. Do you modulate often?
Well, back in the 80s, a lot.
You must have done a lot of Steve Green music.
When I was at my last church, we used to do a lot more gospel, and maybe like 6 in one song.
That's right. Yeah, gospel or 80s music.
There you go.
That's awesome.
These are just qualifications for a church sound operator that I lifted out of Bill Gibson's The Ultimate Church Sound Operator's Handbook, and it's a pretty complete list. The top 2 are listens to music and loves music. Those are critical if you want to be a sound operator, in my opinion.
You would think, right?
Yeah.
You would think.
Yeah.
Proven advocate of the church, of the structure, agrees with church doctrine. You're not a gossiper. You're not backbiting. Servant, positive outlook. Check your ego at the door. You see, all these things are good reminders for us to say, have I been as consistent in my spiritual life as I should be? Have I been praying for my worship pastor, for my team? Are you a lifelong learner?
Love that one.
Are you committed to working hard? Do you have a long attention span? A stable family life? You're pursuing excellence. Are you technically gifted? Maybe not, but maybe I can get you up to speed. Good people skills. Mature perspective, likes to help others succeed, doesn't participate in gossip. Anyway, it's
that's
short
all good. Yeah, and I guess this is really the pursuit of excellence, right? In all areas of our lives, whether, I'm a committed Christian, right? I'm a committed sound tech or worship pastor. I'm a committed to loving people, right? I'm committed to growing. I'm committed, it's just, you would think that all this would be basic, right? But us human beings, man, we're so complicated. Yeah.
It's called sin.
Well, when we get together as a team, this applies to everybody, right? Not just the techs.
Right.
Yeah.
And we can talk about these basic things when we get together. Maybe there's scriptures that can back up certain aspects of this list.
Yeah.
I think
like in Philippians with humility, consider others more important than yourselves. Serve others.
Yeah. I think like Christian was saying too, this is the type of stuff that you can have in your like position descriptions or position profiles. If you're coming up with position descriptions for each thing, it's like, hey, these are some of the qualifications. Not that it has to be 30 points, but make it simple, but say, hey, this is the kind of person that we're looking for, and this is the kind of person that we expect to be on the team.
So these were the qualifications, but what are the responsibilities of a sound tech? Right here. Praise, gets to know the team leaders, find out what the music director wants you to do. In my case, I'm always trying to be a servant of the worship pastor if I can be. I'm trying to serve. In fact, the first thing I do when I had techs recruited to the team, first thing I want to teach them is servanthood. So it's not about the mixer, the speakers, or the mic cables. It's about taking water to the platform for them to have to drink.
Love it.
And
that's good.
So the first thing I try to get them to do is ask what people need. and do that.
That's good.
Yeah, if you're
10
faithful with little, you'll be faithful with much.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny about that? The worship team finally gets the idea and says, well, we're going to try to outserve them.
Ooh.
They start bringing donuts and coffee, and we bring water.
Contest.
It's a big happy outserve the other one.
Yeah.
Next week you have a waffle maker.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good recipe for a healthy marriage right there. Outserve one another. I like that.
This, you'd have to actually have the PowerPoint to watch. It's called Confessions, but we don't need to go into that now. And
Okay.
if you want to share it with somebody later on, you can. But that's about all I have for that one.
No, that's great. Thanks for leading us in that, Doug. And any other thoughts, anything that's kind of spurred up in you guys from your experience and working together or working on teams, and I don't know, something that may have stuck out to you?
Yeah, personally for me, I think at the end of the day, when it comes to the Mars-Venus relationship, because a lot of times it is like that, the worship leader and the tech person relationship. At the end of the day, you know, humility, it just goes such a long way.
Mhm.
And so for any of you guys listening out there, just be humble. Don't think you know everything, because you don't. And the more you learn, the more you're learning of what you don't know. And so just, you know, be each other's biggest champion. Be each other's biggest supporter, biggest cheerleader, whether it's from behind the faders or behind a microphone on the platform. Serve one another and let that be the example that you're setting for your culture, for your teams, because that's, I mean, it's biblical. Like you said, Philippians, you know, you're trying to esteem one another higher than yourselves. So at the end of the day, I think humility just really goes a long way.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the way you are is the way your team's going to be, right? When you're the leader. When you're the leader, whether it's a tech leader or the worship leader, you set the temperature.
Yes.
Right. And so if you have a bad culture, I would say look inward first.
Yep.
Right. How are you contributing to that? Or if you have a good culture, how are you contributing to that? And how can you teach others to continue to champion that? And so I would say that you set the temperature. And so always be aware of that. I think is important.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah.
I love the whole lifelong learner thing. And I think that goes along with humility as well. Just to say, whether I'm a worship leader or a tech guy, I'm going to keep learning until I drop dead.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, man.
There's always more to learn.
That's what I love about you, man.
Yeah.
You know, I just get that vibe from you.
That I'm about to drop dead?
No.
That was good, dude. I like that.
Nice. Well played.
Yeah, well played.
I'm getting this vibe right now.
Oh, right.
Are you about to? No.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, you just threw me off with that. But yeah, no, I always get that vibe from you that you're always learning what's new, how can I improve,
Wanting to grow.
what's the latest,
Yeah.
you know, whether it's music or movies or stuff you're working on. I just always get that vibe from you that you're always on that pursuit, being a lifelong learner.
Yes.
So we need to hang out more.
Yeah, let's hang out.
I'm up. I'm down with that.
Yeah, I think it's time for lunch. That's what I think. Yeah. Michael, anything else you want to add?
I would just say learn to serve.
Yeah.
You know, learn to serve in every aspect of your life. You know, and
that's good.
Hold equipment loosely. It's not yours. You know.
Yeah.
That's a good call.
And pass the torch as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Very good.
Teach the people below you who you are training up.
Yeah.
How to serve as well.
Yeah. Leave a legacy.
Discipleship.
That's discipleship. Yeah.
You'll never regret that.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, even after you left the church you worked at, you know, it's still thriving and still moving forward from things that you've implemented for 10 years.
You know, and some of the younger kids that I had the opportunity to raise up, actually 5 of them went into this field professionally.
Wow.
Whoa.
That's awesome.
That is awesome,
crazy.
man.
That's a legacy, man.
It is.
Exactly.
I think 2 of them are out now. Actually, one of them is studying seminary in Colorado.
Oh, wow.
So,
even better.
Yeah. I mean, but he's still serving the church. So
I love pastors who know tech.
yeah, me too.
Yeah. Me 3. Yeah.
Yeah, that helps.
It really does. Well,
thanks
Doug,
so much, Doug.
Doug, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate that. Dwight and Jonathan, thanks for making the time.
Absolutely.
It sounds like there might be a part 2 to this. So if there is, we'll be in touch. But yeah, no, I appreciate both of you guys from afar. Obviously, you and I, we're a lot closer, but we're not working together anymore. But I don't know. I have a special place for worship pastors in my heart because it's really the avenue that really helps me feel connected to God. Like I'm a big theological guy. I love, digging into the text and all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. But there's something about worship that just really makes me emotional and opens up my heart to God in a different way. So since my last ministry position, I was sharing this with a few people, is that when I attend church, I'm not really, I rarely find myself singing. Rarely anymore. And when I was in it, like that's all I did. My hands would be up. I'd be at the mixer. I'd be in it with the band, but I was finding those moments and passionately. But now I just like to hear like the songs being sung over me.
Like let it wash over you.
Let it wash over me. And sometimes I cry, sometimes and so you just connect in a different way. And so I just love you guys and thank you for what you guys do and how you've sacrificed and dedicated your lives to that pursuit, the pursuit of leading people and yourselves into the presence of God. I think is worthy of just saying thanks. So yeah.
Appreciate that.
Servanthood can be taken sometimes too far if you're a sound guy. You guys remember Mike Overland from Yamaha?
Yeah, I remember Mike.
Right. So he had a sound guy who would get so into worship that he'd be like this during worship.
Yeah.
And you need more monitor, and he's not there with you. So, or you look down and there's no sound guy behind the booth now because he's serving communion. It's like, okay, all right.
Yeah. No, I've had that on the worship team too. Like a vocalist, like
where's my band?
Yeah. Millennials, like the mic is over there and they're like laying on the ground. Just taking it in. Like, yeah, but that's not what you're supposed to be doing right now. Appreciate it.
So, there's limits.
There's limits, for sure. Absolutely, Doug. I never missed the cue. Don't worry about it.